a year. So we're measuring everything once a year at these different grade levels. Is that right?
So each grade level is administered the reading and the mathematics assessment, and that's why those two have growth indicators, because we do that every year. And it happens toward the end of the school year now, generally starting in April and May. The English language arts pieces have to happen a little bit earlier because of the grading process involved. Our science and our social studies are not administered every year. They're just, in writing as well, they're just administered at certain grade levels, so they don't have growth indicators on those.
Well, I think the board feels that we're not opposed to having assessments done, but we'd rather that the STAR exam was more of a diagnostic tool to help us identify where students needed help, as opposed to a tool to judge and then label student performance and, by extension, teacher performance. So unfortunately, we don't have that right now. And I know that we've been working on our EDGE program, which is our own way to measure student achievement and growth. And I'd just like everybody to know that if we're going to just follow STAR accountability testing as a way to judge how well our schools are doing, that's really a false way to do it. There's a lot more to it than that. And if a person would take the time to visit the school and understand what's going on, they might come to know that. And I would encourage everybody in the community to do that, and not just follow an article in the newspaper or something published by Children at Risk. So I think my colleague needs to speak now, and I'll thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rice. Mrs. James?
Thank you, Mr. Rice, and thank you, Mr. Verdeen. Okay, so I'd just like to follow up on or acknowledge some of the things my colleagues have said. Knowing a little bit more about the data, the trends in the data, how we're doing on closing achievement gaps, what we're doing to disrupt, you touched on a little bit, but I'd like to understand the trends in the data so we can kind of look at it from a different direction. So I appreciate them asking for that. As Ms. Halliger pointed out, we have some, while we're as a district performing above the state and region level, we have some student groups that are not. So that's important for the community to realize, and for us to realize and talk about in this boardroom, so we can, again, disrupt that trend. I agree with Mrs. Tossand, who talked about academic growth. If we're not growing, if students aren't growing a year, then we need to understand why, and kind of look into that. I heard a lot of strong tonight, and I know that's the topic of tonight, was talking about curriculum and data and interventions and the tiered interventions and all those kinds of things. But something that occurs to me is, what about some of the basic needs of our students? What about students that are hungry or have had some type of trauma, or which is the whole reason for the for the reprieve last year because of Hurricane Harvey. So we have a lot of our students who have whatever situations going on in their lives, and I feel like that they have to feel ready to learn. And if they're hungry or tired or have anxiety for some reason, then we have to do something about that in order for them to learn. Otherwise, we are being inefficient in our efforts because we're just trying over and over and over again to teach kids something when they're not ready to receive the information. So I just wanted to mention that. I feel like in the EDGE program we had addressed that a little bit with some of our movement programs. We had some feeding, extra snacks, maybe everybody who's eating breakfast, some things like that. We had some extended learning time, I think, even in as part of the EDGE program. I'm not exactly sure how it all ended up, but some of those components seem to me to be places we could invest now that would improve some efficiencies in our overall curriculum delivery. I liked your ideas about books and getting information to daycares. I know we've talked about that before. And having information on our website available for the public. And then I guess the other thing I want to ask or want to say is this is the same type of thing. If we invest in literacy, if we invest in the ELC program, while that is money invested right now, it's money that pays out in the future because we're not having to reteach. We're not having to have Saturday tutorials. We're not having to have all these other interventions and struggles. So I guess I would say I agree with my colleagues. Let's invest the money now in the kids and in things that are going to make a difference because that will make us more efficient in the long term. So I guess my only question after that long speech is how are we doing with wraparound services? Have we considered that at all in terms of, counseling, helping kids with their basic needs, kids that have undergone trauma? Where are we headed with that at our most needy schools, but maybe as a district as well?
So we have some services that are consistent across the board, whether it be social workers, counselors. Once we become aware of trauma or serious concerns, we kind of jump in right away. Some schools as well have some unique programs. I know that Chris McAuliffe has Community in Schools, which is able to address some family needs that oftentimes we as a school district are not able to. And so that's proved very beneficial. There's also the emotional backpack training, which has been occurring at many of our schools, which helps just identify needs and help staff know how to best address, both to identify and then how to address and support both students and families kind of in crisis situations. There's definitely a need for more, and we're working through that, whether it be partnering with our Collaborative Communities Department or as well with working with our special ed department, Dr. Hill, and then of course working with other opportunities in the future with grants. So I would say that there are some things that we are able to address some needs right now, but at the same time, sometimes the needs are quite severe and quite numerous to where that's still an opportunity for us to continue to grow.
Thank you, Mrs. James. I have one quick question, then we'll move on here. Mobility rates are not factored in this data, are they?
There's a new category this year that's sort of problematic that looks to have students been continuously enrolled. If it was campus specific, it would be a much more useful indicator. TEA ventured out into that area for the first time this year, trying to assess data for students that were considered mobile or not. However, as it worked out, it's built on the district level. So if a student moves between campuses within the district, they're not considered mobile. It's only if they move from out of district into the district that they would be considered a mobile student. So the data is a bit problematic now, but we're giving advice back to TEA on that and hope to have better information in the future around mobility. Now, we do have a mobility percentage that's in our taper report, but it doesn't speak to the specific data.
Okay, so thank you for that clarification. As Mrs. Tossan stated, I'd like to thank the principals that are here. We appreciate you being here. I'd like to also thank all of the principals in our district. As expressed by the board members up here, we are dedicated to ensuring that all students succeed. And I personally want to express that early reading intervention is a huge part of our district being successful, in my opinion. So I'd also like to echo the comments that my team has expressed up here this evening. Thank you for the presentation. I wanted to make a quick comment to my fellow board members. Let's stay up here on the dais, although they will need a few minutes to get those that are outside in for the recognition. So just please hang tight. But we will now open this up for public comment if there's any. Okay. Dr. Dupree, do you want to make a comment?
I did. I just wanted to ask, I want to again acknowledge our principals being here. Joe, would you like to introduce them by name, please, to give the board, let them know who they are? Yeah, I know we have,
I apologize we didn't introduce them earlier. So from your left to my right, We have Nikki Roberts at Glover Elementary. And we have Dr. Trinae Hill at Lantern Lane. We have Dr. Crystal Gardner at Hunter's Glen. And then we have Andre Roberson, who's our principal at Krista McAuliffe. I know these principals feel the urgency to achieve significant improvements this year, and we appreciate their hard work leading with the pressure and supporting staff, but staying focused on what students need.
And I would also acknowledge that everything you've heard described tonight is taking immense effort by a whole lot of people in school leadership, academic affairs, and in the principals, in that key leadership role, which I know the board acknowledges across all of our campuses. So everybody's working very hard to meet the needs of all of our students, so I appreciate their efforts. As we wrap the meeting, I would ask, well, I've acknowledged staff, as we open the door, if any staff member could kind of allow the parents to have a seat, because we've got a bunch of students that are going to be recognized. It would be good to allow staff to kind of move to the back so that the parents could have a seat while their children are being acknowledged, and then when they leave, we can return to our seats.
May I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Meeting adjourned.